Of all the planets, Saturn is the most beautiful. In size, second only to Jupiter, compared to Earth, a monolith. Saturn's diameter is 120,000 kilometers. But like Jupiter, Saturn is an orb of gas. Were there a container big enough, the planet would float in water. Saturn's only solid features are perhaps a tiny central core and the rings. The rings are moonlets, billions upon billions of them. Lumps of icy rock, the size of motor cars. By naked eye, Saturn is the farthest visible planet. By telescope, it has rings and moons. This picture is from a powerful telescope on Earth. And this from Space Telescope. They reveal a Saturnian storm. In time-lapse, again from Space Telescope, the storm girdles the equatorial belt. Just why is a mystery. The cause could be seasonal, for the storm blows up every 30 years, the time it takes Saturn to orbit the Sun. En route from Jupiter, most information about Saturn was gleaned by the twin Voyager probes. Their show began in the early 80s. First, the great moon Titan. The photos were a letdown. Titan was shrouded in haze, but Voyager had sniffed the familiar. With Saturn barely visible through the clouds, this picture is drawn from Voyager's data. An atmosphere rich in nitrogen, like Earth's, but denser, and drizzling ethane. Lakes, even seas, a planet-sized moon bigger than Mercury. Titan could be Earth in deep freeze. As Voyager radioed home, one thing was clear. Titan, largest of the Saturnian moons, must be revisited by radar mapper. Meanwhile, a course correction for Saturn. These are real pictures, Saturn, its rings and its moons. Saturn's composition is like Jupiter's, a tiny dense core surrounded by gas, 90% hydrogen, the rest helium. Apart from the rings, Saturn's greatest difference to Jupiter is the apparent lack of weather, obscured by smog. But change the camera filters, and there are the same frantic weather bands. Voyager's task was to scrutinize the upper atmosphere. Once identified, the craft would track a weather feature. But why, compared to Jupiter, the smooth outer haze? The answer could lie in Saturn's cooler temperatures and weaker gravity. In wide shot, the weather belts are just discernible, plus 3 of Saturn's moons. The belts are streams of cloud, mostly blowing east around the planet. Westerlies are rarer. A white spot, just apparent at the top right, is a storm the size of Europe. Through a false color filter, another storm is obvious, the dark spot below the yellow band. This Voyager close-up has the storm with a pair of smaller turbulences. And here a jet stream, similar to the gales that whip round the upper atmosphere of Earth. The difference on Saturn is that they blow at 1,500 kilometers an hour, much faster than on Jupiter. So the tranquility of Saturn's outer smog belies an atmosphere of swirling eddies and churning currents. Voyager beheld a cold soup, the cloud top temperature minus 130 Celsius. To the moon Enceladus, discovered by William Herschel in 1789, scanned by Voyager 2 in 1981, now explored by computer. Enceladus was a mere 500 kilometers in diameter, 60% ice, 40% rock. A young surface. The result, possibly, of interior water welling through fissures and freezing. Another rocky snowball, Mimas, less than 400 kilometers across, with a crater the size of Mount Everest. As this Voyager picture shows, had the missile which caused the crater been slightly bigger, Mimas would have been smashed to pieces. Unluckier impacts, it surmised, created the rings of Saturn, ancient moons pulverized in cosmic collisions. The rings, lunar debris. Using a background star as reference, Voyager was detailed to survey the rings. They stretched for 279,000 kilometers. But the rings were little more than a kilometer thick, and there were thousands of them. This time-lapse revealed dark spokes. One theory is that their dust levitated above the rings by Saturn's magnetic field. Voyager's pictures ended centuries of speculation. Galileo had spotted something in 1610, but the rings weren't identified as such until 1659 by the Dutch astronomer Huygens. Until Voyager, it was still believed there were no more than 6 or 7 rings. In fact, there are 7 main bands, each comprising hundreds of rings. Voyager not only proved the rings weren't solid, it identified their nature. They're formed from billions of particles, aggregations of silica rock, iron oxide, and ice. This edge-on sequence beautifully records the gaps between the main bands of rings. The particles in the rings range from specks of dust to rocks the size of cars. They're kept neatly in orbit by little shepherd moons. Saturn's rings remain only partly understood, as does the planet itself. The Saturnian day is 10¼ hours, and at 1,500 million kilometers, Saturn is the 6th planet from the Sun, now just a distant beacon. There's no shortage of moons. Iapetus, a frozen rock. Dione, amply cratered. And at least 20 more. Saturn, a celestial classic.